I never thought the smell of fresh-cut grass could make me cry. But that's exactly what happened the first morning I stepped onto the porch of my new home. It wasn't just the grass, it was the way the dew sparkled on it. The way the wooden boards creaked beneath my bare feet, and the way it reminded me of my father's old farmhouse back in Indiana. My dad used to say, "Son, a house is just walls and windows, but a home? That's where you remember the laughter." For years, I'd been chasing that feeling, and for the first time in decades, I thought I'd finally found it again. The house wasn't fancy. Just a two-story colonial. White siding with faded green shutters. It's the kind of place where you'd expect to find a swing hanging from an old oak tree and kids riding bikes out front until sunset. It sat just outside the borders of a neighborhood run by one of the strictest HOAs in town, a place I had no desire to belong to. I wanted freedom. I wanted to plant what I liked, paint the shutters whatever color I chose, and park my old '72 Chevy in the driveway without anyone sending me a letter about community standards. I bought the house not just for me, but for my family. My daughter Sarah, newly divorced, was moving back home with my two grandkids, Ellie and Ben. They needed a fresh start, and I wanted to give them the kind of safe, stable place where memories could bloom. The first weekend, we celebrated with a good old-fashioned Sunday dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, apple pie, just like my mom used to make. Sarah was setting the table when she sighed and said, "Dad, I haven't felt this kind of peace in years. It feels right." I smiled. "That's the point, honey. A home's supposed to give you that." Ellie, who was only 8, piped up, "Grandpa, can we plant a big garden out back? With sunflowers taller than me?" Of course, I chuckled. "We'll make this yard your kingdom." The laughter that followed was exactly what I'd been craving. For a moment, it felt like the world had slowed down. It's just for us. But peace never lasts long when trouble is lurking nearby. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I was outside trimming the hedges when a woman in oversized sunglasses and a floral scarf marched right up my driveway like she owned the place. She didn't even bother to introduce herself. Just crossed her arms and gave me a look colder than January wind. "You must be the new homeowner," she said flatly. "That's me," I replied, trying to stay friendly. "Name's Tom." She didn't shake my hand. Instead, she pulled a clipboard from her tote bag and started flipping papers. "Well, I'm Karen Walters, president of the Oakwood Homeowners Association. I'm sure you were given the bylaws when you moved in." I raised an eyebrow. "Bylaws? No, ma'am. I bought this house because it's outside your HOA." Her face twitched. "That's a misunderstanding. All properties in this area fall under Oakwood HOA jurisdiction." Shook my head. "Not this one. My lawyer checked. County lines put me just past your boundary. This house is independent." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. She wasn't used to hearing no. "Well, independent or not, we like to keep this neighborhood looking respectable. That truck in your driveway?" She pointed to my old Chevy, completely unacceptable. "And those mismatched garden chairs?" Eyesore. I let out a breath, half amused, half annoyed. "Ma'am, with all due respect, what I do on my property is my business." She leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was delivering a threat. "We'll see about that. Sometimes people think they can live outside the rules, but we always find a way to bring them in." And with that, she spun on her heel and marched back across my lawn without another word. That night, at dinner, I told Sarah about the encounter. She frowned, setting down her fork. "Dad, people like that don't stop." She caused trouble.
"At her try,"
I said, masking my concern. "We're not breaking any laws." But deep down, a knot had already formed in my stomach. Sure enough, the next few weeks were filled with little incidents. I'd find anonymous notes taped to my door, remove unsightly vehicle, or paint shutters approved colors only. My mailbox was even stuffed with HOA newsletters, though I wasn't on their list. It was harassment, plain and simple. One Saturday morning, I caught Karen standing at the edge of my yard with 2 other HOA board members, whispering and pointing at my house. My grandkids were playing tag in the front yard, their laughter ringing out. But Karen's sharp voice cut through it. This place lowers property values. We'll seize it by force if we have to. I froze. Did I hear that right? Seize it by force? I wanted to storm over and confront her, but Ellie tugged at my sleeve just then, asking if I'd push her on the swing. I looked at her little face, so full of trust, and I swallowed my anger. Not here, not in front of them, but inside, I made a silent promise. No one threatens my family's home. No one. That evening, after the kids went to bed, I sat on the porch with Sarah. Fireflies blinked in the yard, and the night smelled faintly of honeysuckle. She sipped her tea and asked softly, "Do you ever regret buying this place, Dad? Maybe it would have been easier to find somewhere else." I shook my head. No, this house is more than wood and nails. It's a chance for us to start over. A place where the kids can grow up without feeling judged every second. I won't let one bitter woman take that away. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. Then we'll fight for it, together. Her words steadied me. For the first time since Karen had appeared, I felt less alone. The turning point came a few days later. I woke up to the sound of hammering. Looking out the window, I saw Karen and 2 HOA men erecting a signpost at the edge of my yard. In bold black letters, it read, "Property under Oakwood HOA jurisdiction. Compliance required." I stormed outside, heart pounding. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen smirked. "Establishing authority. This house belongs to Oakwood now." "Like hell it does," I snapped. "You're trespassing." Her smug expression only deepened. "You can either comply willingly, or we'll escalate." The words echoed in my ears long after she left. Escalate. What did that even mean? A lawsuit? A fine? Something worse. That night I barely slept. I kept pacing the halls, staring at the family photos we'd just hung. My father's wisdom echoed in my head. A home is where you remember the laughter, and I swore to myself, no one is going to steal that from us. The next morning, the sign was still standing in my yard like a scarlet letter. My grandkids noticed it before I could take it down. "Grandpa, what does that mean?" Ben asked, his 9-year-old voice uncertain. I forced a smile, even though my chest was tight. "It means someone made a mistake, buddy, and Grandpa's gonna fix it." But when I reached for the wooden post, I found it wasn't just hammered into the ground, it had been cemented. They'd poured quick-dry concrete around the base to make it permanent. My hands trembled as I pulled uselessly at the pole. Cement. In my yard. Without permission, Sarah stepped outside and froze when she saw me struggling. "Dad, what are they doing to us?" Her voice cracked, and I could see fear in her eyes. She'd already been through so much with her divorce, moving back in with her kids, trying to rebuild a life. This house was supposed to be her safe haven. Now it felt like a battlefield. I hugged her tight. "We'll get through this. Together." Even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. That evening, after dinner, we sat around the old oak dining table. The kids colored with crayons, while Sarah and I talked in hushed voices. "I got this in the mail today," she whispered, sliding an envelope across the table. It had the HOA's letterhead stamped in red, "Notice of Nan-compliance." I opened it and felt my blood pressure rise. The letter demanded immediate removal of my non-conforming vehicle, repainting of my shutters to approved neutral tones, and monthly HOA dues totaling $300. It ended with a chilling line. "Failure to comply will result in fines, liens, or forced action." I slammed the paper down. "This is harassment. They don't have jurisdiction here." Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. "What if they scare the kids? What if they actually try something?" I wanted to reassure her, but the truth was, I didn't know what they were capable of. Later that night, unable to sleep, I sat alone on the porch with a glass of iced tea. The cicadas hummed, and the air carried the scent of cut hay from a nearby field. It reminded me of summer nights back at my parents' farmhouse, the one place where life had always felt safe and steady. I closed my eyes and remembered being 10 years old, lying on the grass with my brother after a long day of chores. Fireflies blinked overhead like tiny stars. My dad had walked out with 2 root beers and said, "Boys, no matter what happens in this world, don't let anyone tell you where your home should be. You plant your roots where your heart is." Those words came back now with a fierce clarity. I wasn't just protecting a piece of property. I was protecting the promise of home. For me, for Sarah, for Ellie and Ben. The next morning, I made some calls. My lawyer confirmed what I already knew. Legally, the house wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. But Karen and her board were exploiting confusion and intimidation. "They're bluffing," the lawyer said. "But bullies like that often count on fear. Document everything, and don't back down." That gave me some relief. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I mowed the lawn or sat on the porch, I'd see Karen's SUV crawling by, windows down just enough for her to peer out. Other board members followed suit. It's like vultures circling prey. And then came the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a Saturday morning, sunny and warm. The kids were playing with the garden hose, squealing with laughter, when suddenly a truck pulled up. 2 men in reflective vests jumped out, carrying clipboards. They marched up the driveway without so much as a knock. "Can I help you?" I called out, stepping between them and the kids. "We're here to perform an HOA property inspection." One replied curtly. I laughed bitterly. "Not on my land, you're not. This is an HOA property." The taller one smirked. "That's not what we've been told." I felt my temper rising. "You've been told wrong. Now get off my property before I call the sheriff." Sarah rushed outside, clutching Ellie's hand. Her voice shook as she said, "Dad, what's going on?" Before I could answer, the men turned back toward the truck. "We'll be back with enforcement," one of them muttered. The truck roared off, leaving dust and dread in its wake. Sarah's face was pale. "They're not going to stop, are they?" I pulled her close. "No, but neither will we." That night, I couldn't shake the image of those men striding onto my lawn like they owned it. It stirred up an old ache in my chest, the memory of the day we lost my parents' farmhouse. It had been nearly 30 years ago. Taxes had piled up, and my father's health had failed. I was in my 20s, too broke to help. I watched helplessly as the county auctioned off the land that had been in our family for generations. I still remembered the sound of my mother weeping as strangers walked through her kitchen, deciding what would stay and what would be tossed. That regret had never left me. And now, looking at Sarah and my grandkids asleep in the rooms of this house, I knew I couldn't let history repeat itself. Not this time. The following week, I started noticing something strange. Neighbors from the HOA side of the street began giving me quick nods, even small smiles. One elderly man, Mr. Jenkins, stopped me while I was out for a walk. "You're the new fellow, right?" he asked, leaning on his cane. "That's me," I said cautiously. He sighed. "I've lived here 30 years. That woman Karenchi's a terror. She thinks she's queen of this place." "You're not the first she's tried to bully, really?" I asked, surprised. "Oh, yes. She'll find me once for hanging Christmas lights, too. Early. Tried to make my wife tear up. Her rose garden, because it didn't match community guidelines. Half the neighborhood's scared of her." He lowered his voice. "But some of us, we're rooting for you. You stand your ground." I thanked him, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we weren't alone in this fight, but Karen wasn't done yet. One evening, I came home from the hardware store to find Sarah on the porch, clutching another envelope. Her hands were trembling. "It was taped to the door," she whispered. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Final notice: failure to comply with Oakwood HOA. Regulations will result in forcible seizure of property. Enforcement scheduled. My vision blurred with anger. This wasn't just intimidation, it was a direct threat. Sarah's voice broke. "Dad, they can't actually do this, can they?" "No," I said firmly. "Not legally, but they're trying to scare us into leaving." Ellie poked her head out the screen door then, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Grandpa, are the bad people coming?" Her innocent question nearly broke me. I knelt, hugged her tight, and whispered, "Not while I'm here, sweetheart. Not while I'm here." But inside, My resolve hardened like steel. That weekend, I called a family meeting at the dining table. Sarah sat beside me, the kids across from us. Crayons scattered on the table like little flags of innocence. "Listen," I began softly. "Sometimes in life, people try to take what's not theirs. They think power means they can bully others into fear. But this house, this family, we don't run from bullies. We stand together." Ben puffed out his chest. "Like superheroes?" I smiled. "Exactly. Like superheroes." Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time, the fear in her face gave way to something stronger: determination. We weren't just defending a property anymore. We were defending a legacy. A few nights later, I heard engines rumbling outside around midnight. I peeked through the blinds and saw 3 SUVs parked across the street, engines idling, headlights off. My heart raced. Was it Karen and her so-called enforcers? I stayed awake all night, watching. The SUVs eventually left, but the message was clear. Intimidation was escalating. By sunrise, I knew one thing for certain: this was going to come to a head, and soon. The morning of the so-called enforcement arrived like a storm on the horizon. I woke early. Sky still gray, birds just beginning to stir. My chest felt heavy, like the weight of my entire past was pressing down on me. I stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, staring at the dew glistening on the grass, and I remembered my father's farmhouse, again the sound of his boots on the porch, the smell of fresh cornbread wafting from Mom's kitchen, the sense that nothing bad could ever touch us there. That house had been taken from us, and I had carried that regret my whole life. But today was different. I wasn't a scared young man anymore. I was a father, a grandfather, and this time I was ready to fight. By mid-morning, Sarah joined me on the porch. She looked tired, but determined. "Dad, do you think they'll actually come?" I set my mug down. "They'll come. Bullies always follow through when they think you'll fold. But we won't." The kids came tumbling out next, still in their pajamas, hair tousled. Ellie clutched her stuffed bunny, eyes wide. "Is today the day the bad people come, Grandpa?" I crouched down, cupping her little face in my hands. "Sweetheart, no one's going to take our home. Not while we've got each other." Ben puffed his chest like he had the week before. "We'll protect it, right, Grandpa?" I smiled, ruffling his hair. "That's right, buddy. Together." It was around 11 a.m. when the convoy rolled in. For black SUVs and a pickup with flashing yellow lights, Karen climbed out first, clipboard in hand. Sunglasses perched on her nose like she was some kind of general marching into battle. Behind her, 5 HOA board members filed out, dressed in matching polos with the Oakwood logo. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the commotion. Some peeked out from behind curtains. Others stood on porches, whispering. The air felt electric, like everyone knew something was about to break. Karen strode right up to the edge of my lawn, planted her heels in the grass, and announced loudly, "Thomas Miller. By authority of the Oakwood Homeowners Association, we are here to seize this property due to non-compliance." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "You have no authority here, Karen. This property lies outside your jurisdiction," she sneered, waving her clipboard. "We have documented violations, unpaid dues, and multiple notices ignored. You can surrender peacefully, or we'll escalate." Sarah's voice rang out from behind me, trembling but fierce. "This is our home. You can't just take it." Karen turned her sharp gaze on her. "You're trespassing in our community, and trespassers don't last long." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even some HOA members looked uneasy. At that moment, I pulled out my phone and raised it high so everyone could see. For weeks now, I've documented every letter, every threat, every trespass, and I've spoken with my lawyer. You're breaking the law, Karen. What you're doing isn't enforcement, it's harassment. And today I called the sheriff. Almost on cue, the wail of sirens pierced the air. 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Deputies stepped out, hands resting on their belts, eyes scanning the scene. Karen's face blanched. She hadn't expected this. The sheriff, a broad-shouldered man with a calm authority, walked up. "Morning, folks. What's going on here?" Karen immediately launched into a tirade, waving her clipboard. "Sheriff, thank goodness you're here. This man refuses to comply with community regulations. He's a danger to our neighborhood." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Community regulations? You mean HOA rules?" "Yes," Karen snapped. "And this property falls under our jurisdiction." The sheriff turned to me. "Mr. Miller, is that true?" I shook my head firmly. "No, sir. My lawyer confirmed this house is outside their boundary. I've got the county map and paperwork to prove it." I handed him a folder I'd prepared. He flipped through it, nodding. Then he turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, this property is not under Oakwood HOA, which means you and your people are trespassing." Karen sputtered. "That's impossible." "We have the right." "No, you don't," the sheriff interrupted firmly. "And if you don't leave immediately, I'll have to charge you with harassment and unlawful entry." The crowd murmured, neighbors whispering to each other. Some even clapped quietly. Karen's face turned beet red. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You'll regret this, Thomas. We'll ruin you. You hear me? Ruin you." I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. "You can try, Karen, but you'll never scare us out of our home. Not me. Not my daughter. Not my grandkids. This house is ours." The sheriff gestured to the deputies. "All right, folks, let's wrap this up. HOA business stops at the boundary line, and that line ends before this property. Go on now." One by one, the board members slunk back to their SUVs, avoiding eye contact. Only Karen lingered, trembling with fury. "You'll see," she spat, her voice cracking. "Without control, this neighborhood will fall apart, and it'll be on you." Then she stormed off, her heels sinking into the grass as the SUVs roared away. The silence afterward was deafening. Then, slowly, neighbors began to applaud. Mr. Jenkins, the elderly man who'd spoken to me earlier, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "You did what none of us ever could. You stood up to her." Others nodded, some even shaking my hand. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just my fight, it was the whole neighborhood's. Sarah hugged me tight, whispering, "Dad, you did it. You protected us." I held her and the kids close, my heart swelling with both relief and pride. That evening, we sat around the dining table again. The kids were chattering about how Grandpa beat the bad guys, their laughter filling the house with warmth. Sarah served homemade peach cobbler, and for the first time in weeks, we all ate without fear hanging over us. After the kids went to bed, Sarah and I lingered on the porch. The night was calm, fireflies blinking softly in the yard. She rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I don't think I've ever been prouder of you." I smiled faintly. "I just didn't want to lose another home, Sarah. Not again." She turned to me, her eyes shining. "But maybe that's the point, Dad. A home isn't just about walls and land. It's about fighting for the people you love. That's what you taught us today." Her words hit me deep. She was right. This house wasn't just a second chance for MIT, it was a legacy for her. For Ellie and Ben, a reminder that home is where love refuses to be pushed out. In the weeks that followed, things changed in Oakwood. Karen stepped down as HOA president under pressure from her own board, her reputation shattered after the sheriff's intervention. A new group of leaders emerged, more reasonable and kind. The community slowly began to heal. As for us, we planted Ellie's sunflower garden that summer. By July, the stalks towered over her head, golden blooms swaying in the breeze. Ben built a treehouse with my help, hammering nails with the determination of a boy who knew he was safe. And every Sunday, we gathered around the dining table for family dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, sometimes peach cobbler. Laughter filled the air, the kind of laughter my father had always told me made a house into a home. Looking back now, I realize something important. Life will always throw bullies your way. People who think power is control, who mistake fear for respect. But family? Family is stronger than fear. I fought for this house, yes. But more than that, I fought for my daughter's peace, my grandkids' joy, and the promise that they'd grow up knowing what home truly means. And maybe, just maybe, I also fought for that boy inside me who once lost everything. This time, I gotta keep it. So if you've ever faced someone trying to push you out, someone who thought they had the right to tell you where you belong, remember this? Your home is not defined by their rules. It's defined by the love and laughter inside it. And if you've got that, then you've already won.